Hello and welcome. This is Carl Batchelor, Senior Staff Writer at Niche Gamer. I'm also known as RPGN Boss on Twitter, and I will be reviewing, and I'm currently reviewing, Pillars of Eternity. What I'm going to do now is show you a short gameplay video to give you an idea of what to expect. It's a typical party-based role-playing game, very much like Baldur's Gate. You're going to hear people frequently call back to that game. My review will go more in depth, so I'm going to focus instead on combat, which is something you really have to experience firsthand, not read about, to fully understand. So there's a fight up here, and I'm going to get my characters into position. You can set up the auto pause the same way you would in Baldur's Gate, and it's probably a good idea to keep it that way, because at least it gives you the opportunity to plan your attack.
I'm here.
Let's see, we'll have this guy up there.
I'm here.
Spread out my guys a bit. My ranger, I have her built to where she can do melee or ranged. She's pretty good either way, but we'll have her do ranged.
Settle.
How may I help?
Might need a little bit of spell assistance.
What?
Nice, I got 82 damage on that one.
Indeed.
Okay, we'll just loot the bodies. Nothing really important here except crafting ingredients. Which, by the way, the crafting's pretty good in this game. It's nothing different than what you might find in other games, but I like the way they did it. For instance, you can click on a piece of equipment, right-click on it, go down to enchant, and if you have the proper materials, which I don't for this armor, you can enchant something. There's plenty of different things you can do. You add a proofing, which will protect it against a certain type of damage, stat boosts, mind you. So you do have a lot of options. Yeah, here we go. I could add a Resolve 2, which would increase her Resolve. I could add Might 2, which would make her stronger. Dexterity. Enchant. There you go. Now I just added a Dexterity 2 enchantment to her armor, which makes her even more powerful than she already was. This character is very late in the game, so I have an overabundance of powerful gear at the moment. Now here's another thing I wanted to show you. This is very cool in this game. You're constantly given a set of options whenever you enter a new area, or you're going into a dungeon, or you're exploring a point of interest, and you can actually roleplay it as you would like pen and paper D&D on a tabletop with your friends. See, I can examine it, I can try to step around the boulder, use a hammer and chisel to clear the boulder, or I can push the boulder out of the way. Each of these is going to result in a completely different scenario. So let's say I want to push the boulder out of the way. Now I can pick which party member I want to try to push the boulder out of the way. My strongest one is Adair, so I'll have him try. Okay, it made a check against his might stat, which was 16, so he successfully pushed the boulder away. Unfortunately, someone didn't make a save against their athletics. My mage didn't have a high enough athletics skill, so now he got trapped under the hailstorm of boulders. Which, if you've played this game, you know Aloth is extremely frail. Okay, so we made it past there, as the vignette tells us. And we've made it inside the nest, but unfortunately, because Aloth, my mage, did not pass his athletics check, now he's probably going to be injured. And that injury can, as far as I know, only be removed through a day's rest. So it's a very clever system because it tries to recreate the tabletop experience. I mean, out of all the systems I heard that made it into Pillars of Eternity, this is the one that surprised me the most because I didn't hear about it. Yeah, Aloth has 2 injuries. He has bruised ribs, which subtracts 20 from his fortitude and 2 from his constitution, and a concussion, which, well, that's not very good for a mage now, is it? Let's do a little bit of exploring here. And I just ran into a dragon.
Right. What's the plan again?
You know, I haven't been to this area yet, and it just so happens that I start my recording during one of the 3 Fable dragon fights. You might have a lot of fun watching this, because this is the first time I fought this dragon.
Vermin invading my nest, threatening my hatchling. You shall feed my young.
Yeah, I think this might be a big mistake. What the hell? Let's see if we can do it. Good God, that thing does some damage.
What?
Don't laugh if I don't beat this thing. The last dragon I fought in this game, it took me 3 tries to kill it, so I'm not really expecting miracles here. Of course, it doesn't help matters that my mage has a concussion and can't do anything. Surprisingly, we're doing pretty good damage against him. Mage went down, he's dead. I figured that would happen. No surprise there. As long as my healer can stay alive and keep healing everybody, we should be alright. Now if I'm gonna mark him with my paladin. That should take him out.
It's not working!
Yeah, I think my chanter's gonna die. And death... Oh, I actually got him! There you go, how about that? My chanter was almost dead too, and when I mean dead as in he won't be revived, because when you die in this game, you die for real. Okay. That was a hell of a thing. I did not expect that when I was recording this video. So there you go. I just killed one of the game's 3 dragons. That's pretty impressive. So, that's the game right there. That's what you can expect. It's every bit the Baldur's Gate heir apparent that we had expected it would be. It does have its share of glitches, but it really does deserve to be called the next Baldur's Gate. And some people get mad when you compare it to it, but we could just say Temple of Elemental Evil or Arcanum. I do play the game on hard because if you don't, it's kind of easy, but I think it's because of a glitch. That's another thing, it's a little glitchy, but as you can see, the fun is there. It's a great game, and I'll show you a couple other parts of the gameplay as we continue the video. Next up in my video, I'm going to show you what character creation looks like. Now, this is one of the many taverns you can visit in the game. Very pleasing atmosphere. I love the music in the background. Birds chirping since we're in the Elven village. Stereotypical, but it does work. And of course they have some ogre bouncers over here. Plenty of NPCs to talk to and quests to go on. But one of the more interesting aspects of this game is unlike Baldur's Gate, where you had to play a multiplayer game and kind of cheese the game into letting you create your own characters, if you don't want to play,
stranger.
if you don't want to play as the pre-made characters the game gives you, and you should really, because they took a lot of time building stories around these characters and letting them have their own personality. But if you want to play with your own created characters, you can do that. You go to any tavern, you talk to the tavern keeper, tell them you'd like to hire on some help, and it will take you to this screen. And using a little bit of your gold, it's not really that expensive. I have about 45,000 gold, and to make an adventure around my level costs 2,200, so not really that expensive. For a little bit of gold, you can make your own adventure. And you'll start with a blank slate, and it will take you back to the character creation screen. Now, character creation is very D&D 2nd edition-ish, but with a little bit of 3rd edition mixed in. It has anyone who's played Neverwinter Nights, for instance, will feel right at home with Pillars of Eternity, because it does borrow a lot from both 2nd and 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons. You know, you have your races here. You have the human, the Amawa, I think they're pronounced. They're basically shark people. They're kind of like descended from... They seem to be sharks because they come from the water and have sharp teeth. You have the dwarves, elves, Orlin, which are like bestial, feral, halfling type creatures, and the godlike, which, well, the godlike are just weird, and it's a whole other story that I don't have time to tell. So you pick your race. Well, I like them. They're my favorite. And we'll go with that. And you have different subclasses within each race. You have the islanders or the coastal, and they have their own different bonuses. For instance, the coastal race, they have immunity to, or bonuses against prone and stun effects. And the islanders can actually equip a different weapon set. So it depends on which one you want. It gives you some variation. You have 11 classes. And I'll mention this in my review, the classes are actually very diverse, and there's a lot of originality here. If you haven't read my review yet, I suggest you do so, because I'll be going over what makes these classes so unique. They've done a lot of clever things, especially with the Cypher, Paladin, and the Chanter classes, especially Chanter. I really like what they did with that. They took the idea of a D&D bard and really turned it on its head. Came up with a lot of good ideas. So let's make a Barbarian. Barbarians are a very fun class. They do splash damage with their melee attacks, which is really cool. I've started to play one. Very good character class. And you get, every level, you get abilities, just like you would in Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition. You have different feats that unlock, almost like a skill tree in a way. Some of them do have prerequisites that you have to unlock before you get the next one. And let's see, we got Might, which controls your strength, Constitution, your health, Dexterity, which is more speed and reflex, Perception, mainly controls your defense against anything coming at you, and your interrupt rate, which is the rate at which you cause an enemy to lose focus during your attack animation. Will and intellect, that has more to do with wizards and their area of effect for their abilities. Some other classes use it as well. And resolve is sort of like your thiefy ability. It controls your ability to concentrate in battle. It allows you to get it. Basically, it prevents you from being interrupted. So it's like the opposite of perception. Someone has high perception, they interrupt you. You have high resolve, you avoid that interrupt. Very simple system. And even though it tells you here that barbarians don't need perception and resolve, you really should have a lot of perception and resolve as a barbarian. And the only reason I say that is because deflection is extremely hard to come by with a barbarian, yet it is the absolute most important stat in the game to get up. You heard that from me. And then you get backgrounds. These backgrounds aren't just for stat boots. I always say boots. They're not just for stat boosts. They're also for the background of your character. Now, it won't matter much here because I'm making an NPC who's going to join me in my party, so he's not really going to have a backstory, but as I'll show you later, it actually does show up within the game itself. The funny thing is, the game will actually call upon your character's story. So let's say if this was my main character and I chose him to, say, be a laborer, the characters in the game will say, "Oh, you have the hands of a working man. So what is it you did back in your homeland?" And you can actually say, "Oh, I was a merchant, I was a blacksmith, I was a carpenter, yada yada." And you can come up with this really, extravagant background story for your character that people will actually call upon in the game, and they will make mention of it. It seems silly to make a big deal of it, but it's a nice little touch, and there's many nice little touches in this game that set it apart from, other Baldur's Gate clones. Of course, you can select your face, and you can select your hair, and you can look crazy and have mohawks or afros. We all love to have a character with a mohawk. See, he looks kind of Indian, doesn't he? Now that I look at him, they actually do look Native American. You give him Sephiroth hair if you want to. Make him a blonde Aryan. Whatever you feel like. Change his skin color. You can almost make him look human. Which kind of defeats the purpose, but...
Leading the way.
Silence surrounds me.
What is it?
And that's your character creation. That's just one level. Now, I have many different characters in my party that are waiting to be added. They're back at my stronghold, which is another thing I'm going to show later in the video. So I have to dismiss one guy, put him in there, and it allows me to level him up to my level. You have Stealth, Athletics, Lore, Mechanics, and Survival as your 5 main skills. Stealth, explanatory. That's self-explanatory. That's just your ability to remain hidden while you're sneaking. Athletics is probably the most important skill in the game. It determines a lot of things, including your rate of fatigue. So it's incredibly important for everybody in the game. Lore is sometimes called upon in dialogue choices, but it's mainly used for spell scrolls. Mechanics is your lock picking and trap removal. And survival, although that sometimes comes up in dialogue options as well, it's mainly used to determine the amount of time potions will last. So it can be important to have that on your melee fighters. There's plenty of different class skills you can take that are used for all classes. They're not unique. For instance, you can have weapon focuses if you want to specialize in a certain weapon, a weapon style. Like, for instance, you could pick Knight. That's probably the best overall one, in my opinion. You have your battle axe, your sword, your Morning Star if you want a blunt attack, and crossbow if you need ranged. Pretty well balanced. You know, if you're a monk, you're probably going to go with peasant because it's spears and quarterstaffs and unarmed. Soldiers get big two-handed weapons like great swords and pikes. So there's a lot of room for growth, and you can really flesh out the kind of character that you want. You have two-weapon style, one-handed style, two-handed weapon style. You even have a weapon and shield style, which I would recommend getting on at least one character and making them a tank because it's really overpowered. So with this guy, Barbarians, they like two weapons, they do splash damage. You want to go with speed. You could go with weapon and shield if you wanted to be more defensive. Let's see. Put some survival in there. Blooded is a very nice skill, so is Frenzy. I'm just showing you a short example of the character creation here. Not being really serious. And then you can choose one of the weapon styles. Knight is always good, especially for a Barbarian. Focus on athletics. And as you can see, every time I level up, it unlocks new skills. Like superior deflection, that's a very important skill to get on everybody. Gives you a nice little boost to your deflection, which, as I've said before in this video, is the most important stat in the game. 99% of the attacks that are going to come at you in the game will check for deflection. Thick-skinned is another good skill to have on a Barbarian. So there you go, there's my Barbarian. Now I just made him in my party, so if I needed another party member and I got sick of all the NPC party members and I wanted to have all self-created ones, I could do that. Downside is they come naked, so you're going to have to give them their own own equipment. So I can yank out a couple pieces of equipment here for them. Some of my leftover equipment. Some gauntlets. Give them a good looking helm. And a cape. There's a lot of great loot in this game, and it all shows up on your character, which is pretty cool. So there you go. Now I have my Barbarian that I made, and I could make 5 other characters and have, or 4 other characters and have a full 6-member party handcrafted by me. The only drawback is none of them are going to be voiced. None of them will have their own quest. Because at any time you can look at one of your party members that you recruited, hit the talk icon, and you can talk to them. Every so often, as they do in Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter Nights, they'll have something new to say and might even initiate a quest. Because every character in the game has their own quest, and usually completing it will net you some unique item or, reveal a little bit of the backstory of that character. As I mentioned before, your party members do have their own quests and they will talk to you, especially when you camp. Sometimes little events will happen like this. Here we have Durance, the crazy, wild-eyed priest of the game. He's He's sort of like this game's equivalent to Minsk in Baldur's Gate. I think he's quickly become my favorite character. He's a bit of a pervert, and if you have a female main hero, he will make some rather lewd remarks to her. And he does have this thing about his staff. I don't know if it's like a penis thing or not, but he's always talking about you examining or noticing his staff. So I don't know if the writers were trying to allude to his pervertedness, but
Yes?
anyway, what I
shall.
did was I fast traveled to my stronghold. Now I have my stronghold completely upgraded. So what you're looking at now is the completely upgraded and fixed stronghold. If you remember, Baldur's Gate 2 introduced the concept of a stronghold. Well, maybe not introduced, but it made it an integral part of gameplay. Or tried to, anyway. It was more of an afterthought. You just showed up there, collected a little bit of gold, dealt with a few angry peasants, whatever. Here, the stronghold takes on much more of a important role. Here I'm going to show you the list. This is the action list, everything that's happened in your stronghold since its founding. So anytime something happens, somebody comes in, there's a payday, bandits steal money, there's an attack, and yes, attacks can happen on your stronghold. It'll show up in the status screen. You have the event screen, which will give you detailed rundown of what's happening, and you can choose how to deal with it. If there was an attack, it would say there was an attack here, and would give me the option to either personally command the retaliation and defend from that attack, or I could let my hirelings do it. Because yes, you can hire people. You pay your hirelings on a weekly basis. You hire them to defend your keep from attacks, because yes, you will be frequently attacked. At this point in the game, though, my keep has a security of 50, which essentially means that God himself could come down and attack it, and he would fail. So I even have if I wanted to, I could hire Korgak here, who is an ogre. You'll notice that there's stats next to each hireling. The crown represents the amount of prestige that hireling brings to your keep, and that prestige determines the amount of gold you make per week. And then the stone figure next to it, the number next to that, represents the amount of defense they add. So, like this Crucible Knight, he adds 4 to my prestige and 2 to my security. If I were to recruit the ogre, he adds 6 to my security, but subtracts 6 to my prestige, because he's an ogre and nobody wants a big stinky ogre running around your keep. So there's a trade-off. You can also do your party management at the keep, because anyone who's currently not in your party will sit back at the keep. Another very interesting feature in the keep is that every so often, if you look here at turn 53, it says major adventure completed. Every so often you'll have adventures that will pop up, and the game will ask you to take one of your party members who's not currently within your party. It will ask you if you want to take them on an adventure. And if you allow them to go on the adventure, they will win money, prestige, and sometimes rare items for you by going on that adventure. Now they'll be gone like a week and you can't use them in your party, but the upside to that is they'll usually come back with something good, and it'll be put in your chest up in your main keep. And this is where you would buy all the additions to your stronghold. I've already bought everything. And it's a nice little system. It actually does add a little bit of depth to the game. It right now, with it being fully upgraded, I make roughly 1,500 to 2,000 gold a week in the game, which is pretty good. I mean, I make more gold than it costs to upkeep my stronghold. So at this point in the game, it's actually a really nice form of money accruement. You're not going to get super rich off the keep, but it's a nice, form of income. And you can tour your keep. It's fairly big. You can add things to it. There's a weapon shop, a reagent shop where you can buy potions and crafting tools. There's one you can go to the church and buy spell scrolls. Pretty much anything that you need in the game, you can put in the keep, and it'll give it to you and allow you to access it at any time. You just have to actually go back there if you want to buy something. One of the things I really like about the keep is once you've finished upgrading everything, once you've gotten it, it sort of gives you that feeling of important, like your character is important in the game world, because frequently you'll be visited by major NPCs or lords and ladies of the land who will come to your keep bearing gifts. And although it's rare, sometimes you can buy those gifts from the NPCs. For instance, I had one lord come to my castle and he offered to sell me this shield right here. That shield that I'm showing you on the screen, incredible stats. That is really good. Plus 12 shield deflection, plus 12 base deflection, and only minus 4 accuracy. That is a killer shield. And it was a major NPC that came into my castle and offered to sell that to me for 7,000 gold.
I'm here.
Now, when your guys win stuff on those major adventures that you send them on, they'll throw it in your vault, your strong box over here. So you open it up, and now you see all these items. These are all the items that my NPCs found on adventures while I was away. So even if you're going on adventures, you're completing quests, you're going through the main storyline, you're still going to have these little adventures going on in your stronghold that if you go back there, you open up the vault and you're like, hey, I got 800 gold and a bunch of rare crafting items. So it's a win-win, so it really does help you in the long run. And then all the NPCs that visit you will come here in your main hall, and you can talk to them. Sometimes they'll sell you things. It's a fun little system. It's something that they didn't need to put in here, but it does add a lot of personality to the game. It gives you yet another reason to waste another 20-30 hours on it. All in all, I really enjoyed it.